Okay, well, I don't know about you, but I come through a session like that, and if I was prone to thinking, follow that, then we'd be in trouble. But happily,
But you're not. So we're not.
happily, Father has a plan, and for reasons best known to himself, he has scheduled me to be on now. So hey, let's go with that and let's see what he wants to do.
You're the best person for the job.
Apparently so, which is good. So when I said I would do a session, I had no idea what it was likely to be, and over the few weeks coming up to this, still no idea what it's going to be, and over the first few days of this, well, starting to get some idea, and so I've got some things here, which God has given me to talk a little bit about, and then to give you an opportunity to go to Him and see what applies, what doesn't apply. So, and He's also given me a question. This is like 4 o'clock this morning. So, He said, "Do you have any questions about destiny? Do you have any questions about your destiny?" So, in everything that I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to have some music and just a chance to refer back to Him, then please take the opportunity. If the questions that I'm asking are not the questions that you need to ask, then please take the opportunity to ask the questions that you need to ask of Him. I'm not suggesting that anybody asks me the questions about destiny or about their destiny. I'm suggesting they ask Kate. No, I'm not even... I'm not even suggesting you ask anyone else, although you can, because we can all have insight and we can all encourage one another in these things. So, but please, in the activation times, in the times when when there's some music going and you have the opportunity to go to Him, then please do take that opportunity to ask the questions that you have about destiny, because this series is about preparing for destiny. So if we don't know things about our destiny, we want things made clearer, we want to even understand what destiny is. I'm going to cover some of that, but please do take that opportunity. So, speak to Jesus, speak to Father, speak to Holy Spirit, whatever, in those times. So God he threw me a curveball to start with, and said, while I was playing the piano yesterday, he said, "Your destiny is your worship." Right. Okay, let's pull that one apart. There are two things that can mean. Firstly, it could mean what I've destined for you is to be a worshipper, which I believe is true. And secondly, what it can mean is that what I have planned for you, how you worship is actually by fulfilling your destiny. And I think that is the main thing that he was prompting me to, because that's the thing that I found most difficult. So my destiny, the things that God has prepared for me to walk in, by walking in those, I'm giving Him worship. So all the singing and all the strumming and all the playing the keyboard and the other things that we do, the shaking and rattling of things and all of those are incidental to our actual worship, because worship is about worthship. It's about ascribing honour and glory and worth to God, to who He says He is, and to who we appreciate Him to be. And because we have layers and layers of revelation and appreciation of who he is and what he says about himself and what he says about us, then our worship grows and grows and grows. But if our worship is confined to just singing or just playing music or just face down on the ground, whatever, then we've not quite seen everything that worship is, because as with everything else, worship has to be grounded. By which I mean, we need to be bringing heaven to earth. So I was considering this, and God showed me the people of Israel. Now Moses went to Pharaoh. This is a verse that's always bothered me, and I looked to see where it was, and I found it comes up several times. So if you look at Exodus 8 verse 1, Exodus 9 verse 1, Exodus 10 verse 3, you find Moses going to Pharaoh, or even being told to go to Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go so that they can worship me." Now we know that the reason Pharaoh needed to let the people go was so that they could go through the wilderness and into the land of promise. Okay, well, Pharaoh didn't know that. So, was God telling Moses to lie to Pharaoh? I don't think so. Did Moses think he was lying when he said, "Let my people go so that they can worship me"? So what's the purpose? What was the purpose of going into the wilderness? The purpose of going into the wilderness was to progress into the land of promise, to pick up the inheritance that God intended for them. And so for us, our worship is picking up the inheritance that God intends for us. So, I do not believe that the worship that Moses was referring to was the whole tabernacle, animal sacrifice stuff, all the rules and regulations. I don't believe that, and I have reasons why I don't necessarily believe that, one of which is that God later says, "I never wanted that." Now I'm in a process here, because I'm going, okay, so why did you decree that then if you never wanted it? But I think there were reasons for that were around what the people actually wanted to do and how they saw themselves and how they thought that they needed to worship God and appease him in some way. And that's a whole other subject. But I don't believe that God really, he says, "Sacrifice and offering I did not desire." So okay, so that's not the worship that he wanted from the people when they went into the wilderness. So God's intention was for them to enter the land that he'd promised to Abraham, to Isaac and to Jacob. And they were to value, which is the same word as worth and worship, they were to value that birthright that God had given to them. So I said he promised it to Abraham, to Isaac and to Jacob. And Jacob is an interesting case. I'll come to him a little bit later on. Abraham was told to leave and to go not knowing where he was meant to go. And your destiny, my destiny, can be specific to a location. Okay, for the Israelites, it was specific to a location. They needed to travel across the wilderness and get into the land of promise. For Abraham was told to leave. Lot was not told to leave, but he did anyway. So I may talk a bit more about that in a minute. Jacob was told to go to Bethel and stay there. Now, he did half of that. He went to Bethel. Now, bear in mind that Bethel was the place where he'd had an encounter with God. He'd seen angels ascending and descending. And he himself had said that it was the house of God and the gateway of heaven. And God said, go and live there. And so he went there and he built an altar there, but he didn't live there. He may have gone back there from time to time, I don't know. But the next thing this is in, have I written down when that was? Genesis 35:1. And later on in chapter 35 of Genesis, you read that that Jacob left Bethel and he went on the road towards Ephraim, or I believe it was. So in leaving Bethel, he left the place where God had told him to stay. Abraham he told to go, and Jacob he told to stay. So what would have been different in Jacob's life if he'd actually stayed at Bethel rather than leaving? Well, look at what happens in Jacob's life. And he goes through a whole series of family tragedies, some of which happen precisely because he's in a location that's different from where God's told him to be. So, on the road, Rachel, in giving birth to Benjamin, dies. Jacob's son Reuben has an affair with Jacob's concubine. His daughter Dinah gets raped by people who are in the land he was journeying through. And if you go on and on looking through this, it all culminates in Jacob going down to Egypt and taking his whole family down to Egypt, where they went 500 years in slavery. So the question is, what would have happened if he'd actually stayed at Bethel, the place that God told him to stay? Would they have avoided all that? Did God have a different plan for giving them all the promised land that didn't involve 500 years in Egypt first? Now, the good things to take, the good takeouts from this are, no matter how wrong we get it, God sorts something out. All right, He has a plan. He knew what would happen anyway. He had it planned, and they got into the promised land. But for individuals involved, life could have been very different. So the fact is that our destiny is not different to, or well, it is different, but it's not separated from the destiny of everybody else around us. It's not separate from, it may be different to, but not separate from those of our ancestors who have all left us a legacy one way or another. Now, God can deal with the negative aspects of that legacy, and He can promote the positive aspects of that legacy, and He does that. But our individual destiny for each of us is just a part of God's whole plan and purpose for everything. Now, this is where we fit. He's made it, He's crafted it specifically for us. But He's crafted it in such a way that it makes up a facet of His whole overall purpose, which He revealed to Adam in the first place, which was to bring heaven to earth, to rule over the earth and subdue it, to bring heavenly government into this place. So one of the questions that I suggest we would like to probably ask is, how does my destiny reveal a facet of your plan and purpose for the cosmos? Okay. I mean, for us, it's very, we can come to a weekend like this and think, don't get me wrong, okay, it's all about us, because it's all about our destiny. But it's not all about our destiny. Our destiny is really important, and we are really important, but actually God's plan and purpose and the way we fit into it and the way we contribute to that is actually the if you take a step back from it and look at it, that's where it starts to get really beautiful. I use the word facet on purpose because if you look at a cut jewel and see how it sparkles, however you turn that jewel and whichever facet of it you're looking at it and whatever angle you look at it and how it catches the light, it's all different, but it makes up an overall whole that looks beautiful. Okay, the question is, how does my destiny reveal a facet of your plan and purpose? Yeah, to the for the cosmos. I haven't got that written down. That just came out of my mouth, so that must be important. All right. Okay, we're going to take just a few minutes and engage with that one. So. Can I repeat the question slowly? Okay. How does my destiny reveal a facet of your plan and purpose for the cosmos? The cosmos is the whole created order, everything that is. So, I would probably say the universe, multiverses, everything. It's what God sent his son to redeem, which is, God so loved the world. That word world there is actually cosmos, and it's everything that there is. Is that a big enough question to to go for? Do you need, if you need to break it down, then do that. But we'll just have a few minutes, and if you need to take it away, then please do. fashioned us specifically for the role and the purpose that He has for us to play. And He's looking to us to represent Him and to reveal Him to the world by being who He's called us to be. And all that stuff that we put on our timeline the other day, both the good and what we considered the bad, He uses that and weaves that all together and brings us to the place we are now. And we can all start from here if we haven't already started. All that we've done, all that we will do, He can cause that to work together for good. So we all know that our destiny is not a thing out there somewhere, not something that we're striving for, but it's a path that we're walking on all the time. So every single moment of the day, we have the opportunity to be walking in line with our destiny. So, how do we know what that destiny is? Well, Alice shared about the scroll of destiny, about Psalm 139, how every day of our lives is written in God's book. And that is there in the archives of heaven, and we can ask to go and see it, or resonate with it, or eat it, or whatever else you feel to do with it. Okay, well, that's good, and that will, if we're able to actually read it and see it, then that will connect with us. But for me, I've not ever been able to actually see it and read it. I have been able to resonate with it in my spirit. I know that my spirit resonates with it. So there are other ways that we can begin to get an understanding of what our destiny might be. And one of those is to consider what God has uniquely placed in us. Because as I say, He has formed us individually on purpose to be part of this whole thing. And because He loves us, He's made us in such a way that it's perfect for us as well as being perfect for Him. How about that? And so if we look at the things which we resonate with, the things that we enjoy, the skill set that we have, the things that He's caused to be formed in us, the things that we're actually born with, then those things can give us an indication of a direction in which God is leading us. Now, like Lindy was saying in the last session, you have to be really careful when you're looking at these things. And the way I would say it is, make sure that those are things that come out of calling and not out of brokenness. Because our brokenness can lead us into pursuing certain things. People who've lost loved ones to a particular disease can end up devoting their life to the support network for people who suffer from that disease. Okay, that's what I mean by coming out of brokenness. That may or may not be what God actually intended, but we need to look at what God has actually put in us that has, sometimes it will have no reference to the generations that have gone before us. It may be really, really unique to us, and that will cause it to kind of set off a bell in our spirit saying, hey, look at this, because this is not something that you've got from your parents, your grandparents. One of those things, for me, let's do a personal testimony. Okay, when I looked at this, I saw a couple of things in me that are not present in my generations. Okay, the first thing is music. Okay, I make no pretensions about how excellent a musician I am, but I love music and I pursue it and I love to create it and I love to make it, and nowhere in my entire family is there anyone who's pursued music before me, as far as I'm aware. And so I know that there's a likelihood that God has called me to do something with that desire to play music. Okay, so in some ways it's then up to me to pursue that and to do it, but it's up to him to direct it where he wants it to go. And so, that's how I end up here playing and singing, because I've pursued that, and I believe that this is, over this weekend, this is where my destiny is, doing these things. Interestingly, God said to me, I want you to talk about worship, which I did, if you recall. And I thought, I'm probably going to need to have my guitar handy. He said, don't you dare pick up a guitar. Like, okay. Okay, so I haven't. And I've not tinkled on the piano either. So yeah, music was one of those things. Another thing that is in my life is languages. I was a reasonably good student at school, but where I really shone was in French. And we did ancient languages as well. We did Greek and Latin and so on, but I didn't really do terribly well at those. But French I did well at. And then I got a degree in French, and it was like, well, I've not pursued that one. And all through my working life, I've not really done anything to do with that at all. And then I got involved in working with Freedom, where I am now, and with getting the stuff that we're, this kind of stuff that we're teaching, this material, out to the world. And suddenly it's like, okay, English-speaking world, no problem. Well, quite a lot of the world doesn't actually speak English. So what are we going to do? Not much of the world speaks French, to be honest. But some of you know Laure from Bath, who is translating some of our material into French for us. And I'm actually editing that. And so, she does the translating. I just kind of check it over and make sure that she's grasped everything that I think is supposed to be being taught. And then I'm editing it and saying, okay, we publish that. But I'm also doing that with people who are translating into Spanish and Portuguese, languages which I don't speak in the natural. Okay, I went to Brazil 20-something years ago, and I picked up a little bit of Portuguese there. And I thought, oh well, they're part of the same family of languages, so it's probably just something. If you speak French, you probably can kind of understand, especially the written language, what's written down in Portuguese and in Spanish. You're probably going to understand it. Until I was talking to Valtraut, who's a lady in the church, who is a German lady, who speaks 7 languages, including Arabic and French. And she said, how do you do that? I'm like, well, it's obvious, isn't it? I just sort of read it and I can see what it's saying. It's not obvious at all. So I know that God has put something there which is kind of like supercharging a natural ability. Okay, he's put a natural ability in me, but he's supercharged it in such a way that I didn't even notice that it wasn't natural. I can't do it with the spoken language, because the spoken language doesn't sound the same, but the written language, it looks the same to me as these other languages. Chinese is going to be a challenge. If I find that I can do it in Chinese, then I'll know that that's definitely good. But I have found that I can't do it in Chinese. All right, yet, indeed. So So that's what I mean. Okay, so there are things in my life that are specific to me that God has put there, and He's put there for purpose. And I've pursued one and stumbled across the other. Honestly, I never pursued language as something that was going to actually be important. And now suddenly it is actually really important, and it's probably the thing that I spend not the greatest, not more than half of my time on, but actually if I cover a whole range of lots of activities that I look after within the ministry, but it's probably the one that I spend the most time of in relation to all the others. So I know that God has drawn that out of me. So whatever you can see in your own makeup, in your own abilities and skills and interests and hobbies and so on, be aware of the fact that God might be wanting to use those and, as I say, supercharge them. Okay? So pick that up, run with that. Finally, and the one that we're going to just finish with for 10 minutes, unless there are other questions you want to ask God, obviously, please use the time for that, is to, and this is something that, it's mind-blowingly obvious, but didn't occur to me for the entire whole of my Christian life until someone suggested it, which is, why don't you ask Him? We engaged with Jonathan Cavan and Liebusters, and the amazing thing about that whole program that he has is that basically you just ask Jesus what He wants to do. So what I suggest that we do now for the last 10 minutes is, if there are any, by all means reflect on those things, ask to see your scroll, ask Him to put a spotlight on aspects of your personality or traits of your interests or whatever, but also ask Him, just ask Him directly, what is written on my scroll? What do you want to tell me about what is written on my scroll? What aspects of it do you particularly want to talk to me about? Because the interesting thing about a book or a scroll is that you don't get to see all of it at once. Whether you see it in those sort of old-fashioned terms of a scroll, or whether you have a more modern book, or even if you have an e-book, okay, you still don't see the whole thing all at once, do you? You've got to navigate through the thing and find the bit that is about what you want, and you can use the index and so on, but allow Him to open the book at the right page, to unfurl the scroll, to select the right page of your e-book, and highlight aspects that He particularly wants us to engage with today. Okay? Okay. Stay there if you want to. Otherwise, lunchtime, and back at 2 o'clock.